Hi there, it's Justin Heminger with Apex Realty Group at Real Broker. We help folks buy and sell homes in Fairbanks with over 20 years of combined experience doing nearly 1,000 transactions. The mission of our channel is to empower our community with a little bit of the information that we've learned along the way. Investing in Fairbanks real estate can be an amazing experience, but there are some pitfalls that we've learned along the way that are obvious to us that should be obvious to you too. Let's talk about the 6 things keeping people from Fairbanks. Number 1, the cold. One of the most obvious and intimidating things about Fairbanks is the cold. With temperatures dropping to 40 below and below that, even sometimes during the winter, it can be a shock to the system to come up here and experience that. If you want to try, you can try to set a deep freezer to that or a walk-in and try to go in and experience it that way, but it's just not going to be the same. Prolonged exposure to that kind of cold, there's just nothing like it. In theory, though, if you're going to be spending any kind of prolonged time outside in that kind of cold, you should have some sort of cold weather gear on. But for the most part, you're going to be going from about to be warm vehicle, like maybe go out and just start it, and then maybe in theory by the time you get to where you're going, your vehicle will be warm. But for the most part, you're not going to be experiencing, prolonged exposure to the cold, unless you are. And then in which case, get good gear. Number 2, the darkness. During the winter months here in Fairbanks, we experience something called the polar night. The sun barely comes up and it's almost like twilight for the hours that we have. It's like 3 hours and 42 minutes worth of twilight, and it's really pretty cool when we get to experience it. But one of the trade-offs of that little bit of light is the huge amount of darkness, and it can be overwhelming for people. The idea of spending that much time in that much darkness. One of the benefits of that much darkness is with the darkness comes the ability to see all the stars and to see the northern lights. Also, the other kind of cool thing about the darkness is the fact that without the darkness, we wouldn't be able to see how much light we actually get. The days are getting a little bit longer every day, and the temperature's getting a little bit warmer. It's 20 above today, and before too long, it's gonna be summertime. And if it weren't for all those really, really cold days and those really, really dark days, we wouldn't feel as good as we do. So it's an interesting bit of perspective. Number 3, the isolation. So if you look at the size of the state of Alaska, we're obviously the largest, but we are 665,000 square miles in size. It's huge, but we're relatively small in terms of population. So for, if we wanted to break it down, everybody gets their own equal slice. Everybody would get, 9/10 of square mile of land. That's huge, and you wouldn't be able to see another person. It's a huge amount of land. But Fairbanks itself is a town of 32,000 people, and we are about 360 miles away from the next largest city, Anchorage. So we're pretty isolated. We're cut off from the rest of the world. But that being said, trying to get to Anchorage, unless we're flying, there's really only one road to Anchorage. Luckily, Department of Transportation keeps those roads pretty clear pretty much all the time. Thank goodness for them. They work around the clock to keep those roads clear.
Thinking about moving to Fairbanks? Well, click on the link below for my free relocation guide where I talk about top schools, top neighborhoods, and so much more.
Number 4, the wildlife. While the abundance of wildlife in Fairbanks is a major draw for some folks, it can also be a major source of fear. Polar bears, grizzly bears, black bears, wolves, moose, they're very common in the state, but for the most part, you're not going to see them. Are they all dangerous? Yes. Will they kill you and eat you? Yes, except for the moose. The moose isn't going to kill you and eat you. They'll kill you, but they're not going to eat you. Should you approach them if you ever see them? No, never. You should just stay in your vehicle or stay inside your house if you see them. For the most part in Fairbanks, animals are just going to, kind of stick to themselves. They're not going to go out of their way to get any closer to you. Especially if you don't mess with them, they're not gonna mess with you. Biggest problem that we have is probably with moose. And it's not necessarily that we have a problem with moose or that anywhere has a problem with moose. Moose just have a problem with everyone and everything. They don't necessarily have a fight or flight mentality. It's just a fight mentality. If they get surprised, they're not gonna be like, oh, I'm surprised, I'm gonna run away like a deer will. They will get surprised and then just wanna fight and stomp whatever is in their path to death and eliminate the threat that way. That's the biggest thing to worry about, is like turning a corner and surprising a moose or being surprised by a moose, but for the most part, if you see a moose, just leave a moose alone. If you see a bear, just leave a bear alone. Don't go out and try to approach an animal ever. Number 5, the bare necessities. So some parts of Alaska are remote, as we touched on in the isolation portion of the video. We are in a position here in Fairbanks where we have access to things like healthcare, to restaurants, expansive grocery stores. We may not have as many grocery stores and restaurants and things as maybe Anchorage, but we're a hop, skip, and a jump. Well, just one quick hop to Anchorage. And Anchorage is, I think, the 5th busiest international airport in the world. Ted Stevens International Airport is. So when you figure that we're just one jump from Anchorage, that puts us in a pretty good spot to get anywhere where we need to be. Fairbanks is absolutely a growing city when it comes to access to basic amenities. And as far as internet goes, I rely on GCI internet myself. We're able to stream movies and play video games and do just about everything that we need to on GCI, and never experience a drop in speed whatsoever. So if you're ever needing internet access, GCI is the one to beat, or one to call for sure. Number 6, the risk of natural disasters. As if the cold and the isolation and the darkness wasn't bad enough, we've also got earthquakes and fires and floods. If you can make it through that, you can make it through anything. So luckily, like we talked about how big Alaska's a huge place. Majority of the earthquakes that we experience, and there are thousands of them that happen every year, all over the 730,000 square miles that is the state of Alaska. So if one is going to happen, chances are it's going to happen somewhere else. Does that necessarily mean that a big one is not going to happen? No. Have we had big earthquakes? Absolutely. Are we at risk for having future big earthquakes? Definitely. That's something that could happen. Wildfires. So this is another one where there's thousands of wildfires every single year that cover the 730,000 square miles that is the state of Alaska. Luckily, the Bureau of Land Management, Alaska Fire Services, watches over this hundreds of millions of acres worth of wildland and keeps the wildfires wild. That's pretty awesome. Now, sometimes it gets a little bit smoky in town, but it's kind of a nice trade-off. If they're taking care of the fires and keeping the fires at bay, and it gets a little smoky in town, well, that's okay. They're doing a great job. As far as floods go, breakup can be hard as ice flowing down the river can cause dams, causing the river to back up for miles. This can be especially hard in low-lying communities. It happened as recently as May 2013, when an ice dam on the Yukon River flooded the villages of Eagle, Circle, and Galena, causing about $80 million in damages. Overall, moving here can be a thrilling and rewarding experience, but it's important to be aware of all the challenges that come with it. It's a place where you can find adventure, beauty, and natural wonder, but can also be tough and require a lot of adaptation. It's important to research as much as possible before you leave, to prepare for when you arrive, and to be flexible for when you get here, because anything can happen once you get here. Hope you got some value out of this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. We really appreciate all your support. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section below. You can also reach out to us, 907-885-0316. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye-bye.